Corbie Mitleid. What a fascinating conversation. I start the conversation off with, we all have abilities, abilities to talk to others, almost psychic abilities. But how do we know how to act on them? How do we know how to trigger them? How do we know how to open them? Corbie is a psychic medium. I'm not sure if you know the difference between the two. She's also an ordained minister, but the difference between a psychic and a medium, very, very different. We talk about how she was introduced to this ability, what she read. There's all these terms that I was completely unfamiliar with, like hooking and drive-bys and shielding. Fascinating discussion over this ability, this, receiving things other than the means of your five senses. According to her, everybody has it. Everybody has that third eye, has that sixth sense. It's just that, can we open it? Can we let ourselves reveal it? Fascinating discussion on what's happened to her. She's a cancer dancer. She's had cancer 3 times. She's had she's 68 years old. She says it. And what she's been to is absolutely incredible. She went full time with her readings after 9/11. She does about 1,000 a year. She works 6 days a week. It's fascinating, the insight and the perspective from her. Her view on discipline is so unique. Can't wait for you to hear it. Thanks for listening. Hi, I'm Joey Pinz. People ask me, how did I lose 130 pounds? The quick answer is always discipline. I started my business, wasn't paying attention to my health, was eating too much, drinking too much sweets. My daughter was born. Next thing I know, I'm pre-diabetic, I have hypertension. I knew something had to change. Discipline. I, like many of you, have faced many challenges in your career, in your family, in your life, in your faith. How did you attack them? How did you approach them? How did you solve them, hopefully? It all had to have some degree of discipline. I'm also asked, how did you found and start a tech business? And it lasted over 25 years. Discipline. I was committed to it, enjoyed technology, didn't enjoy some aspects of it, but knew it was necessary. Discipline. Our podcast mission: how do we use discipline to better ourselves and society? Join me, please, as I talk to interesting people and discuss how they use discipline in their family, in their passion, in their careers, and how it helped them. Our podcast vision: growth through learning from others. Joey Pinz Disciple Conversations. It'll be light and serious. Join us, please. Thank you for consideration. Very excited to talk to you, Corbie Mitleid. Thanks so much for your time. So we all have supernatural abilities, but many of us, they just lie dormant and they need to be awakened. So how is that done?
Well, first thing is you got to want to. All right.
Hmm.
The way I explain it is we're all wired like the same house plan. Is your circuit breaker on or off? Me, I want this stuff happening so the circuit breaker isn't in the way, the power flows. People who believe there's nothing to this or it's the devil's work, it's on, locked, and rusted shut. People who think there's nothing, but they always know when the mother in law is going to call, they have a short in the system. They think they're not
Hmm.
getting anything, but they are. So that's the first thing. You've got to say to the universe, okay, hand me my draft notice. And then you got to see what you're good at because that's where your skill is going to land.
What you're good at. What does that
Mhm.
mean?
All right. What do I do? I'm a certified tarot master and a past life specialist. Those are my two big things. Why? Because when I said yes, when the universe handed me my draft notice, it went rifling inside my internal file cabinet to see what I got. What's my background? Theater major at Brown University, acted in New York, so I understand characters and stories. Words are my drug of choice. I'm a writer, so I can tell the stories. And I loved history from a little kid. So for me, past lives are
Hmm.
full and nuanced, and I see them like a movie. On the other hand, do not ask me to do spirit art, because I can't draw a stick figure with a sharp pencil and a lot of prayer. Not my wheelhouse.
What's the difference? So my parents divorced when I was 11 or 12. I went to live with
Mhm,
my mother. I had a sister. I just always knew Corby. I don't know what it was when I got married and I had children. I knew I was going to have girls. I just knew it.
mhm,
A lot of women in my life. I just felt it. That's not just a hunch. It's not just a coincidence.
mm-mm. No, if you I thought maybe I'd have is coincidence. I felt is you were getting the download.
Hmm.
So, yeah.
So you're 4 year old and you have like an accident. You get bumped. At 9, you read this, this great book, right? The Witch Family,
Oh,
Eleanor
you've done
Estes
your
turns
homework.
everything
Very
around.
good for you. Yes.
And in high school, you get the, Live and Let Die, you get the tarot cards, and, so you get
Mhm.
your notice and you're on your way. You spend the next X amount of years working at this, and then 9/11 happens, and you and your husband say, okay, this is full time, 6 days a week, 1,000 readings a year. So so now, through all that you've learned, are there mistakes that you made before that you learn from? Can you make mistakes
Of
when you receive
course.
these notices?
Jeez, you kidding? It's what I tell people. Even the best of us are only 85% accurate. The
Huh.
only one who's 100% accurate is God, and he's not doing phone readings this week.
No.
Um, Number one, you have got to get your ego out of the way,
Hmm.
because if it isn't, you'll be thinking, am I saying the right thing? Are they going to get mad at me? What's going on? You're not that clear channel for spirit. Okay. Um, you also,
Yeah.
if your ego's in the way, there are certain people that you'll think, oh, they're nasty. I don't want to be them. When your ego's not involved, they may be awful people, but if you just deliver the message, maybe you're the one that turns them around, or at least the
Huh.
message is you are not. And there's also something called praise and blame all the same. And that is a saying that I learned from my own spiritual mentor, the magnificent Wendy Pini, who is the artist for ElfQuest, which has been around for 45 years now. The idea is someone may say to you, oh, Corby, you changed my life. It's so wonderful. You are fabulous. And within 10 minutes, someone else may say to you, oh, you're lousy. You just told me general stuff. I don't believe you're any good at all.
Hmm. Hmm.
Now, if you have a high on the one that loved you and all of a sudden you're crushed by the one that hated you, you're going to be doing emotional whiplash. Um, Joni Mitchell even has a song about it, puffed up and strutting when I think I win, down and shaken when I think I lose. You can't do that, because if you're going to do this work, especially out in public professionally, you are just the tube it comes through. You are here in service.
Hmm.
It is not a matter of my aura don't stink. So the ego has to be on the shelf.
I mean, even it's a really interesting point because these days I don't never said this before, but I just don't read comments because I don't want
Hmm.
compliments and I don't want trolls because I think compliments can be just as dangerous, right? Because then you start
Yeah.
maybe complacency sets in, etc. So, so to get the ego out of the way,
Hmm.
so you're saying, so you had a bad incident in Canada where somebody gave him bad news and they get a death threat and you got the police
Yep.
involved. But so you
Hmm.
felt that coming and there was no way for you to soften it. It came through and you delivered it. There was no way to keep it.
They, it wasn't a matter of it was terrible. It
Oh,
was one of those, "Does Linda love me?" And I had to say, "No, she's with somebody now." And, "No, you're not gonna change her mind. She's really deeply in love." And because of that,
whoa.
no, no, I don't say your life is totally screwed up and you might
Hmm.
as well just go and slit your throat. I don't say those things. This was someone didn't like the fact that I didn't tell them exactly what they wanted to hear.
That's got to happen a lot, right? Because people want to hear what they want to hear, and so if
Yes.
you've got all these terms like hooking, and there was something else that you said that was long. What did you say? Uh, shielding is something
The
very different.
Yeah, no,
The drive
the
by,
hooking. Yeah, let me explain the hooking first, because that ain't
yeah.
me. Um, One of the things when you are doing a psychic expo, the rules are the rules, which is you can have your front person in your booth, and if someone approaches the booth, they can say you're wonderful and talk about how you read and take the money and make the appointment. They're not allowed to go out and accost people who are just walking around the building. That
Jeez.
is what hooking is. And yes, I call that
Jeez.
as bad as the other kind of hooking. Rules are rules are rules. The other thing you're
Try
talking about, drive-by
yeah.
psychic shooting,
Yes,
that's a hot
yes.
button with me. Um, People don't understand the words reality show. It's an oxymoron. It's like jumbo shrimp. They
Mm.
are two opposite
Military
things.
intelligence? Yes.
They look at the Long Island medium who walks up to somebody feeling up the cantaloupes in Wegmans, and she goes, "Your Aunt Doris. She says you have a bald tire in the back and you're going to die in a week if you don't get it fixed. Just telling you." And she walks away. And people think that's real. That is so not real. Number one, her PR people need to go and check out all the Wegmans on Long Island and pick one. Then they have to interview all of the people that they would like as targets on the show. And those people then have to sign legal model releases. And then it gets rehearsed 6 times. But unfortunately, people who are try to do this work but think that their ego is so important that they have to bust through somebody's own boundaries, they're the
Mm.
ones that are the drive-by psychic shootings. If someone came up to me and said, "I have a message from your grandmother and she's really worried and I don't know them," I will go, "I don't know who you are and I don't want that message. You don't have permission to give it." And if they
Mm.
keep pushing, I hit the store manager. That's why people are afraid of psychics. That is not how you do it. People at Lilydale, it's a very famous spiritual community in Western New York. If one of them has a message for you, they would come up to you and say, "Excuse me, my name is Reverend Shirley and I am from Lilydale. I believe I have a message for you. May I come to you?" And if you say no, they go, "Okay." And they walk away and that message is not delivered because you didn't want it. But part of the problem is also there are some people that I call glurpy purple with angels. They're
Mm.
the really sweet, "Hi, my name is Little Dancing Raccoon, and here's my spirit guide, Arctic Bear." I'm sorry, I go vomit. I'm from New York. I don't do that. But when I do shows, I mean, I've been sitting in my chair for 8, 9, 10 hours and reading, and my neck hurts. And so I'll be doing this, and maybe I have a headache. And little dancing raccoon types will say, "I know Reiki, I can fix it," and come at me with their hands like this. And I say, "No, thank you." "No, really, I can't." "I'd appreciate it if you didn't. Let me just back off." And they get very upset and go, "You're not very love and light, are you?" And I go, "Well, you didn't listen." You don't have to take anybody's spiritual hoorah in your face if you don't want it. And that is one of the most important things that I tell clients. You are the one that controls the reading, that controls what happens.
Mm.
If before you sit down with me, you say, "I really don't want to hear about my health. I really don't want to learn about any dead people," then someone who is a good professional intuitive will not tell you about your health and your dead people. That's just the rules. And that's why I teach as much as I can because I want people to realize this is a real skill and a real business, and we have responsibilities to the public.
Creates those rules, Corby?
Lots of places. Um, I am a certified tarot master through the Tarot Guild, but I am also a certified professional tarot reader through the Tarot Certification Board of America, which is no longer with us, but was a very important organization for many years. Part of my test was to write a code of ethics for myself. You know,
Hmm.
you don't tell anyone that they're cursed, that they have bad luck, that they have to buy a magic candle. You respect their boundaries. If you're not a lawyer, you don't give them legal advice
Mm.
kind of things.
Mm.
You
Mm.
don't talk about curses. You don't, you never predict a death. That is between a person, their spirit guide, their higher selves, and God, not you. Because frankly, we have more than one place we can check out. We can the spirit can say, "Okay, 5 possible places in this incarnation. High fever at 4, car accident at 18, mugging at 35, fall out of the window at 60, or prostate cancer at 82."
Mm.
And as you come up to these things, the soul kind of says, "Am I done yet?" No, I guess not. Or yes. Okay. I was in an accident in 2002. Should have killed me. Um, Black ice under snow. My car flipped. I took down a tree, a telephone pole, flipped the car. There were wires all over the car, and I wasn't wearing a seatbelt.
Wow.
Felt like an e-ticket. At no time was I afraid, and I got a couple of bruises. Walked out of the
Hmm,
car.
hmm.
Okay. It wasn't my time. But if somebody had said to me, "Oh, I see you dying in a car accident," I might have died of fright. It's only between you and God when you're going to leave here. Don't ask. And all of you intuitives out there, if they ask, don't say anything. Not your right.
I'm trying to think what the opposite of death would be. I don't know. I don't know what it would be. Eternal happiness. Can you say the opposite? Something extremely positive?
Of course. But what, for instance, if you came to me and say, I want to open up my own broadcasting studio,
Mm.
I wouldn't flip a couple of cards and say, wait until October and fire the second redhead. What the hell does that do for you? I have an entrepreneur's spread. Card for you, a card for the energy around the business, the brick and mortar location, how to market it, clients, competition, staff, finances, what you need to know, and best possible outcome. I give you every piece of information I can to empower you to go out there.
Mm,
That's why I
mm.
say, don't ask yes or no questions. Don't ask, is my business going to be a success? Because what if I said to you, no, looks like you're going to lose everything and live in a box under a bridge? Gives you no place to go. You want to ask, how can I make my business successful? In
Mm.
this relationship, what do we need to do to make it work? And maybe sometimes there isn't anything, but I can put that to you in a kind way. I don't have to say, ah, you guys suck. You can forget it. The only time that I take off my reader's turban, as I say, and I put on my reverend collar is if a woman comes to me and says that she's being gaslit or beaten or
Mm.
something like that. Then I explain to her, you are in danger. This is how you can leave, and tell her about battered women's shelters or 911 calls or things like that, because then her life's in danger. And as a decent human being, I have to tell her how to help herself.
Now, a psychic gets messages through means other than just their 5 senses. A
Yep.
medium talks to dead people. You talk
Hmm.
about in Atlanta how a World War I person came to you, half a face, asked you who won the war. I mean, wh I that's what is that process like, Corby?
Well, the particular thing in Atlanta happened because I had just discovered one of my own lives as a World War One pilot, and I had gone to Verdun. And I'd been to the Western Front, so I had lots of contact. And they just appeared in my living room because I hadn't learned about boundaries. I hadn't, set up my, my guides, my wingmen, if you will.
Hmm.
Um, they're usually confused. First thing they want to know is who won, and yes, you have to explain it was over 100 years ago now. It doesn't matter. What this is a part of their soul that's kind of caught in what I call the gray spaces. So I help them forgive the person who killed them and forgive themselves for what they've had to do in that war. And then reassure them there is no hell. God is way too big for that. And
Mm.
I can help them get across to the light because there isn't any hell. That's simply what mankind invented to control other people. If you think that we are on this little dust mote at the outer end of a galaxy and you think that we are the only intelligent beings in the universe and God really is that kind of nasty,
Mm.
you're not thinking big enough. That's like our watching a bunch of planaria. What are planaria? Go back to your bio, this little wormy things, and saying that one turned left instead of right. Of course not. We don't care. We're outside of that. It's the same. Karma is not bad and good. Karma is five things: healing, service, contrast, unbalanced energy, and healing of beliefs so that the soul can grow. An example I often use is Ryan White. If you remember Ryan White, he was the kid that got AIDS from a blood transfusion back in the late 80s, early 90s. And everybody, in his community treated his whole family like pariahs. Somehow he had gotten to be friends with Elton John. Elton really cherished that relationship, thought Ryan was so brave, played at Ryan's funeral. Ryan inspired him to get sober, off drugs, off all of his addictions, and start the Elton John AIDS Foundation, which has raised $500 million for HIV and AIDS research since then. Well, if you think the old way that Ryan White must have been a terrible person because look what God did to him,
Mm.
instead, Ryan's soul said, all right, in this carnation, it could be short, it could be rough, but look what we can cause to create in the world. So that's an example of this soul coming down with the karma of service.
Hmm.
Not because they were bad, but because they were a courageous soul who was willing to do that to make the world a slightly better place.
Now going back to, so you said you're in the living room. This person shows up. Do they show up? How do they show up? Do you actually have dialogue with them? Is it out loud? Is it mental? Can other people see
I
the
think,
person? Describe it.
well, I don't think anyone could have seen him. I see them pretty much third eye, but I see a heat shimmer or a sparkle, so I know where they are. This poor little trench soldier just looked normal, except this much of his head wasn't there because that's what happened to him when he died. I guess the shell hit him and blew half his face away. They don't come in bloody, etc., etc. They come in as they understand themselves, and they're confused.
Yeah, they're confused and they're upset. And you're having with the conversation you're having with him. Is it out loud?
No, it's brain to brain because I'm sure that he was speaking German because that's what he
Ah,
knew, and I know nur ein bisschen Deutsch, but not enough. So it's, think about the universal translator in Star Trek.
Star
Kind of the
Trek. Yeah.
same thing, thought to thought.
And why would he come to you? Like,
He
why does
felt
it?
the
Why?
ener
Yeah.
he felt the energy of someone who had been there, done that, you
Wow.
know?
I felt the
Um,
energy.
right. It's like I don't get World War II soldiers. I
Huh.
don't get Civil War soldiers. I mean, when I get a past life, yes, I can see them. But the ones that came to me for help were soldiers for World War One.
Because you, in a past life, were a World War I pilot.
That's right. That's right. So they'll sense a resonance. In a way, their souls understand that my soul won't judge them. So,
And you mentioned guides. You have guides that they weren't trained at that point, and they interrupted, your living room session, or. So talk more about that.
all right. Well, number one, if you think that you could get by in this lifetime without angels and guides, honey, we're not that smart. We're just not. Um, and it wasn't that the guides hadn't been trained. I was so new at this.
I see.
When I first started doing this work, um, there was a woman out in the West. I won't mention her name or even where, because she had children she was afraid would be taken away from her by her ex if he knew what she did. But we had done some past life work, some past life regression stuff. She was a hypnotist. And all of a sudden, both of us saw a short, rather stout man in World War II, Luftwaffe colors. And we realized who this was Ernst Udet, who had been a World War One fighter race.
Hmm.
And had that part of his soul had, because it had committed suicide, locked itself into a box, whatever. I mean, this is going back almost 30 years, so it's a little fuzzy. Um, and we helped him realize he would, he had been forgiven. He was allowed out. But this is where a negative thought form spirit came through because that night both of us felt something in the house. Both of us had dreams about um, the uh, Air Force building for the Nazis. Pictures were falling off walls. We figured out who it was, and this was the spirit of Hermann Goering, who had also been a World War I pilot. In fact, had taken over the squadron that the Red Baron had after the Red Baron had died.
Hmm.
Um, in Atlanta, when I got home, again, I'm brand new. I don't know anything about shielding. All of a sudden, I'm on my sofa and I'm in one of the big flannel shirts, and the tail sticks right up in my face. And I hear this voice that says, "Do you believe I can't get in?" And I felt hands around my throat. Well, between calling her and working, I got rid of it. Called a dear friend of mine. His name is Adam, who I am sure has a big neon sign above him on the astral that says, "I'm a professional. I don't care."
Hmm.
He actually was able to get a ceremonial sword through the Hartsfield Airport metal detector. I don't know how he did it, but he did. And he managed to visit, bottle up that spirit. Since then, I've got strong walls, strong guides. Um,
Hmm.
my boundaries are much better. And I'm much more careful about what I want to work with. So, and our guides will change, just like our teachers change. You don't have the same one from third grade to 12th. So, the original guides I worked with were a bunch of my companions from World War I, people I had flown with. Do I still have contact with them? Oh, affectionately, yes. But other guides have come in that are maybe higher vibe, maybe stronger. And I also know better how to ground center and shield myself, which is what I call boot camp. You don't go playing with this stuff unless you know how to do that. Okay.
So, shielding, it's very interesting. So you can actually reject someone that comes to you that you may think may be hostile.
I just look at them and smile and say, "I'm sorry, we're not connecting. I'm not your reader." You don't have to say, "You're nasty." It's just, "I'm not connecting with you." Um, and some people are just asking the wrong stuff. The example I use is a woman who came to me and said, "I want to know where my husband is sleeping with his mistress." I said, "I'm sorry, I don't do remote spying." "Oh, well, can you tell me how many people he slept with?" "No, I'm sorry. Geez, you're no good." "Well, is he sick? Is he going to die soon?" And I looked at my front person. I said, "Laura, I'm not connecting with Mrs. Cooperson. Please give her money back." That's it. You know, I have ethics. And what is remote spying? All right. Let's take the old Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie. When they were together, Brad could ask about Angie, Angie could ask about Brad. Now that they're completely broken up, if one came to me and asked about the other, I would say that's remote spying. I don't have their permission. The energy between you is cut. It is inappropriate for me to go and tell you about that person. Now, if you say, "Hi, my name is Barbara, and I'd really like to date Tom, but I don't know if he's with anybody. Can you see what's up?" I can check what the energy could be potentially between the two of you,
Mhm.
but I'm not going to tell you if he's stopping Barbara down the hall. Not my business nor yours.
I love how the New York comes out of you every once in a while, like when you the Long
I've
Island
been
medium
living
and
in New York
I
State
know,
for
I know,
decades, of
I
course.
know, and that term right there. But going back to, I don't know what you wanna say, people that have passed. If somebody that's
Dead people.
passed
Let's
comes
call
to
them
you
dead people.
dead people, okay, when a dead
Yes.
person comes to you, you can shield them as well?
Well, what do you mean by shielding? Shield
Well,
from them? No,
you
because
mentioned that
I
somebody was hostile.
oh, but he wasn't a dead person. Um,
Ah,
one of the things that I do um, with mediumship is I don't just vaguely go searching because that's when you get vague information. I see a woman in a flowered dress handing you a rose. It's grandma. Can I vomit now? I'm sorry. No.
mm,
Um, so I get what I call the dog tags, who they were to you, their full name, the year they died, and how old they were. Example, my father, Jerome Richard Dorkin, who died in 2001 at the age of 80. Notice that tells me nothing but gets me into the energy. And for some reason, my guides do charades. Um, all my hands at my chest and opening, that's like surgery, or mime smoking a cigarette, things like that. They give me clues. And they can be very specific. Um, a woman wanted to speak to her father-in-law, and I feel myself starting to mime a pool cue because he taught her how to play pool. A
Mm,
woman in Canada wanted to speak to her grandfather, and I feel myself saluting. Now, remember, palm out is Canadian and Brit style. We Americans are down. But this was Canada, so palm was out. Her grandfather was acknowledging her graduating from the Royal Canadian Mounted Police Academy 2 weeks before, which she had not told me.
mm.
Those are the kinds of things that I know we're getting these people. And then I open up and I will tell you exactly what they say. I'll be their megaphone, though it won't sound like their voice necessarily. But that's one of the reasons I will not do mediumship in a public setting because I won't censor. And some of those things don't belong. I have one particular story that you can tell me if you want the PG version or the R version. And
Of
it is
course
the
are.
illustration. R? Okay. Upstate New York, many years ago, there was a biracial same gender couple. The black partner had died. Her white widow wanted to speak to her. Now, this face, nice kid from Cherry Hill, New Jersey, I have manners. But what comes out of my mouth in flawless urban ebonics is, well, shit, if it ain't my white bitch. And I'm going, but the
Huh.
woman in front of me just breaks up laughing because that is how her partner, Isabel, would walk into the house after every business trip. If I was announcing that on stage, I, I don't even want to know what would happen.
Hmm.
It's inappropriate. But on a one-on-one session, I will do that. Now, past lives, I'll do a past life gallery the way others will do a mediumship gallery because that's a top skill of mine, and I pull things down very, very quickly.
Corbie, when somebody comes to you and says that they want you to connect to somebody that's passed in their life,
Mhm.
it, explain that experience. Is it sometimes difficult to reach them? Is it
Oh
always
yeah, I tell people I'm not dial-a-dead. If Aunt Rose is on a
right?
field trip, she won't get out of the car.
Dilated.
Um, so yeah, sometimes they just they don't feel the need. When someone has come to me several times to talk to their husband, I'm going to ask them, why are you still coming back? Because it's kind of like constantly tugging on somebody when they're trying to do something else.
Mm.
My personal rule is please let your people be up there for 90 days. I tell them it's the energetic equivalent of signing the guest register, unpacking the bag, and getting the
Huh.
orientation tour. They are trying to finish up learning the personalities lessons and going into their full soul self. Now, what's that mean? My father was my best friend, and he was a brilliant internist cardiologist, beloved by his patients. He's been gone since a week before 9/11, but sometimes his spirit will still come in when I have a medical intuitive piece to do. What comes in with him? Well, he still puns terribly. Um, his brilliant medical incisiveness, his warmth, his compassion. What is now completely dissolved from who he was because he doesn't need it? His anxiety, his depression, and his hypochondria.
Mm.
Those were things he had down here as personality quirks for lessons. But all of the warmth and the good, compassionate, unconditional love things he had before, that comes down with him. That's the difference between our personality and our soul.
Now, you've been estranged by some of your family, right? Some of your family won't talk to you because of all this. Is there a way? Could you just turn it all off, Corby?
Why?
Yeah.
Why would I?
Right.
You know, sometimes it's hard to understand that certain members of your family will never love you, no matter
Mm.
what you do. But you bless them and you release them. Um, this is the work I am meant to do. I have read 30,000 people in my career, starting from when I did part time in 94. Um, I have, I won't say I changed lives, but I gave them keys so that they could change their lives.
Mm.
Um, there was one client recently that couldn't understand why things kept going wrong in her internship. And I was able to pinpoint something that she felt but didn't want to believe. But I said, this is the truth of it. It is them, it is not you, and this is why. She was in tears. And we
Mm,
figured out how to totally realign who she was going to work for, where she was going to do it. And she said that I lifted such a burden from her. And now she believes in herself again. Well, no, I didn't cure
mm,
somebody of cystic fibrosis, but who knows what that person will do for other people as she goes on. The person I read may never be famous or rich or change the world, but if they're 28 and they have a kid, and because they understood things about themselves, they help the kid understand things about themselves, and then that kid becomes a genius scientist who, stops our next pandemic in its tracks. Some of that had to come from me, from the work I do. That's enough for me.
mm.
I don't want to be famous. I want to be the person that people remember 10 years after I'm dead and smile and are grateful for because I showed them their own selves and I lit a light for them.
Mm. You mentioned Star Trek earlier. In a
Yep,
lot of these big
1966, first show, baby.
yeah, there you go. Yeah, I'm a big fan as well. There's lots of time travel episodes, and
Hmm.
so what happens when they go in the future? They have to be careful for what they do because they might change something in the past. By you giving
Hmm.
somebody insight in their future or what may happen, can that alter something? Isn't that giving them an unfair advantage?
No, because they can decide whether to use it or not. When someone comes, let's use the um, "Does Bruce love me?" thing. 'Cause that's
Mm,
95% of what I get. I'll
really?
pull 5 cards. Betsy, Bruce, the relationship, what they need to know, and best possible outcome. If she still doesn't know what to do, I'll pull what I call the three threes. 3 cards for status quo. You just bumble along, you do nothing. 3 cards for the come to Jesus meeting, and you have serious counseling. And 3 cards for hustle. Bye bye. It's been nice. I'll send you a postcard. Now,
Hmm.
I look at these cards and I may see the Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice sign on leave. But if she looks and says, I guess I should just stick it out, I have to keep it zipped because that's her free will. So, no, I am not changing her future. I am showing her her options. She makes the decision.
What's the difference between tarot cards and horoscope?
What's the difference between an apple and a freight train? It's not even apples and oranges.
Really?
Um, yeah, they're all tools. Tarot cards are archetypal images that, over the hundreds of years, have given ideas, ways to read them. Astrology is something entirely different, and I could give you the name of the woman I consider the best astrologer in the US. You want to learn about that. Me, 1 and 1 is 3 on alternate Tuesdays. Don't ask me to do astrology because it takes math.
Mm,
Better would be tarot cards and oracle cards. Tarot cards have been around for hundreds of years. They have 78 cards, majors, four suits, etc. Oracle cards are basically anything for anybody. They don't have a set number, they don't have set meanings. They are whatever the creator wants to create. So, for instance, here's the Spirit of the Wheel cards that I use. This is by Jody Bergsma, and it's got a Native American flavor to it. Then I've got my Energy Oracle cards, which are something like 60 cards, simple, different meanings by another person. Um, I have 7 or 8 different Oracle decks, and they all have a different way that I use them. One deck is for relationships, one deck is when someone needs a real compassionate message, one deck is when somebody needs their story. But one of the other things that I teach when someone is learning to do this professionally is you must always have a deck for children, whether or not you're going to read them.
mm,
And that is because if somebody is sitting with me and their little 2-year-old muffin is on their lap and they're going, "Mommy, mommy, mommy, one card, one card, one card." And she looks at me and she says, "Look, could you please pull a card for the kid?" And I go, "Oh, look, honey, it's the devil." No, kid will have nightmares. So
Hmm.
instead, what I have for the kid is a deck that's called Kitty Wisdom. And we have things like a little kitty saying, "Don't panic." You can always make this a simple message for a little muffin. She's satisfied, and you can go back to reading with her parents. That's just business, but that's
Hmm.
why I wrote the book, You've Got the Magic Who Needs a Genie, and just revised it. Um, because there aren't any books out there for how to do what we do. There are lots of business books about how to run your business, but how to choose a front person, how to do your booth, how to dress for psychic success, um, how to charge what you're worth. There isn't anything else out there. And I
Hmm.
said, I was on the road for 18 years. My nickname was the Travel Channel. Now that I'm off the road, I want to give that knowledge to the next bunch of kids coming up.
The principle of the tarot cards, or even the oral cards. So before you start,
Mhm.
do you shuffle them?
Sure.
So
And I don't necessarily look at them when I pick them out.
I was gonna
I'll
say,
be talking to you.
so is it divine providence that decides what's going to be displayed? I'm lost
Either
here.
that or their guides are saying over here, over here, over here. If
I
I
see.
knew exactly how this worked, I I could start my own new religion.
Huh.
We don't. I just know that, again, when my ego is not down here and I just say whatever they need, I pull the cards and 85 times out of 100, they are right on target for what that person needs. It ain't me. I'm just the tube it comes through.
One of the things that I really like about you, Corby, I mean, you're a three-time cancer survivor. I mean,
Don't use the word survivor.
oh, that's
Cancer
right.
dancer.
That's right. You're a
Let me
cancer
explain to the
dancer
listeners.
in 1989. Yes.
89, 2000, and 2004. A cancer dancer finds out how graceful they can be under pressure, avoids getting their toes stepped on, and gets off the dance floor in one piece. I hear the
Mm,
word survivor and I hear the energy of somebody barely
mm,
hanging on, and I'm a lot more than just hanging on.
mm.
So, yeah, yeah.
You're a cancer dancer.
It's something that I had to learn from.
Yeah, you also make it a point of saying you get up in the morning. You don't have to.
Hmm. That's right. That's right. When I used to work for lawyers, I had to get up in the morning. God, I hated doing what I was doing, but I was good at it. It made money. Now I
Hmm,
get I when I was working for a lawyer in Atlanta in 1995, I wrote my job list of everything that I would ever want just because I was so frustrated. And it was things like I want a job where love is the most important thing in the mix. I want a job where I can dress up or down every day, depending. I want a job where I can make a difference in the world. I want an office with a friendly resident cat. 10 years
mm.
later, in 2005, I find the list. I have everything, including the office with a cat. So I have three of them, and the cat tree
Yes, you
is
do.
next to me. So, you know, I'm 68.
Yeah.
I can work until I'm two. I joke about I'm going to work until I'm 2 weeks dead, and then I'll just flip the sign and say spirit guide. Um, I can make a difference. I'm my own boss. I get to write. I get to make people laugh. I've done stand-up comedy about psychics.
I can see that.
Um, it's Nobody says to me you're not good enough.
Mm,
Nobody says to me, I'm firing you. I don't care what you say, you're fired. Nobody controls my life but me. And I do work that an AI will never be able to do because an AI cannot
mm.
read a soul.
Well, that's for sure. That is absolutely for sure. It can't read a soul. It can just memorize data and spit it
Hmm.
back. That's it.
That's
There's
right.
no soul there. Yeah.
Mm-mm.
So, you started, I think you said you started in 94 part-time reading. I started my business in 93, and I wasn't taking care of myself, Corby, and I ended up you mentioned you had a Dolly Parton figure at 11 years old, and
Yeah.
I was always a athlete, and I started working in my own business, and before I know it, I was up to 340 pounds. I was just eating too much pizza, drinking soda. And doctor said to me, if you don't lose the weight, you're not going to see your daughter graduate. She had just been born. So I spent the next year and a half losing about 130 pounds. And people ask me, when I tell people this, I see it in their eyes, Corbie. It's like, what'd you do? What's your secret? And there's no secret, people. Everybody knows. I mean, it's just discipline. That's what I say. Just discipline. How does discipline play a role in your life? Your life, Corbie.
Well, number one, I have to be kinder to myself than is my nature. I used to work 7 days a week. Now it's down to at least six. Um, I have to admit when I can't do something. I have to forgive myself for not being everything to everybody.
Hmm.
Part of it is also living what I call the examined life. Your weight thing happened, my cancer dance happened. Both of us looked at this and said, this is something I really don't want to have happen, but I got to deal with it.
Right.
The next thing that I did is, what can I learn from this?
Hmm.
Second thing, especially because I'm a teacher, is how can I teach with it? And then I said, next. Next is important because you don't want to stay stuck in your story. That's one of the things that drives me crazy about a lot of people that have had cancer. 15 years ago, Susan has colon cancer. She beat it and she says, hi, my name is Susan and I'm a colon cancer survivor.
Hmm.
See this? In 1973, I was the Betty Crocker homemaker of tomorrow for New Jersey. I don't talk about it because that was 50 years ago. I've moved on.
Hmm.
Don't stay stuck in your story because you can't find out who you are now if you keep saying that's who I was then.
That's very, very true. And you said something there that when you give somebody news that they don't want to hear, is there a
Mhm.
certain amount of guilt that follows from that on your part? Did I misread that?
No, there's no guilt. There is no guilt. It's stimulus belief response, which I learned from the Auction Institute in Massachusetts many, many years ago. The idea is something is happening. You get to decide how you deal with it.
Mm,
Um, the three magic questions that I learned were, what am I X about? Upset, angry, afraid, whatever. Why am I X about that? And what do I think would happen if I stopped being X about that? You learn to think like a Martian. A Martian comes down here. If you and I were talking and you had water coming out of your eyes, I might say, why are you crying? But the Martian doesn't understand that. So he would just look at you and go, why is there water coming from your eyes? And the Martian would get a better answer because maybe your contact lenses are bugging you, or maybe you have allergies, or maybe there's an emotional basis. And my favorite story for how that can change lives, there was a guy like you, married, had daughter. He was in a bad car accident. They put him back together, but his face basically looked like spin art. He was terribly embarrassed by it and always kind of walked around like thinking everyone thinks I'm ugly, but still married with a kid. So he puts the kid to bed one night. She grabs his face, smushes it next to hers, and says, this would be a great picture, but it would be better if mommy's face were in the picture. Now, the old him would have thought, oh my God, even my daughter thinks I'm hideous. PTSD trauma forever. Instead, he knew think like a Martian. And he said, why would it be better if mommy's face were in the picture? And she looks at him and goes, because mommy can't hold the camera still. And you take good pictures. Right
mm.
there. By asking that question, by being that Martian, he avoided decades of trauma and estrangement from his daughter. We choose. We choose how to deal with things. I can't say that it'll always be easy. Trust me. I had just been married to Carl for 18 months. I didn't know if he'd stay because they said, we're taking you from this Dolly Parton figure to a fat fire plug with permanent side effects, and we're really going to destroy, the physical part of your marriage because of everything we have to do. Carl looked at me and said, am I going to miss them? Yeah, they were gorgeous, but I married you, not them.
Mm.
And I've had to deal with women who, when they wake up in the recovery room from their double mastectomy, there are divorce papers on their bedside table with a note, I married a whole woman. So part of the good thing that came out of this is I realized what a good guy I had.
Mm.
I'd had bad marriages. This one was the keeper. And, we've been together now 23 years, married for 21. But it's because we both understood this has to be worked on. Marriage will be a work in progress. And we didn't give up on each other. Maybe that was the
Hmm.
gift that came out of the cancer dance from his higher self and mine.
You mentioned the Martian. You're trying to
Yeah.
kind of create this character that has no emotions, that's outside, so you can
No, I
better
didn't say
understand.
no emotions. He's delighted to be on Earth. He is just
Uh,
so curious. It's like, why is there water coming from your eyes?
yes.
He doesn't have any judgment of what
Ah,
he's seeing.
no
There's your difference.
judgment.
Hmm.
Hmm. I still think he should have a, New York accent, but I guess that's me. And I the husband, who wants divorce from the wife after a mastectomy. I mean,
Hmm.
that's a gift, actually, right? Because I don't know. I mean, I'm looking at this. I mean, she obviously doesn't deserve that person, and he's
But she doesn't
revealing
see
himself.
the gift at the moment,
Right.
you
Yeah. At the
know.
moment is tragic. Yeah. 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 Corbie Mitleid, what motivates you?
I pretty much told you before. I know that this particular recipe, just like yours, we're one and done. This is
Mm,
the incarnation. Um, I want to make sure I'm remembered for what I taught, that I was useful, that I made people laugh, and in a sense, that I took life right down to the rind. I wasted none of it.
mm. You've never once regretted going full time since 9/11 to getting this gift that you have and you're able to give to others. You've never once regretted that.
I wouldn't say regret, but sometimes I do get tired.
Mm,
Um, when I did a 4-day show in Canada, I'd read 70 people and do 2 lectures. I'd get a reader's high while I
mm,
did it, but, exhausted afterwards. These days, I still wanna do what I do, but I'll be honest, how to market it is so different than it used to be. What I learned for doing shows, expos, that's still absolutely valid. But now, what are the social media cues I have to learn? What are the different tech that I have to learn? I am not a techie brain. I'm a right brain. Tech people know to go A to B to C to Z. I go A to Z to green to Paris.
mm.
So the tech is exhausting. And it would be lovely if I were independently wealthy and I could go over here, please. That is the only thing that I regret, is that having done this on my own, solo practitioner for over 20 years, I there are days I feel like a crispy critter,
Mm.
but not enough for me to quit.
When somebody asks you for a reading,
Mhm.
what is your hope?
I can be useful, that I can give them something that they can use as their toolbox. I remind people, we hand you the toolbox, we are not the repairman. It's up to you.
Mm.
And
So best.
if I do a good reading, all boats rise.
Mm.
Um, A good psychic will help all of us look better. The Madam
Mm.
Hoo-Has and the Swami Swalandas, they make all of us look like trash. Remember the old story? What is it? One or shit ruins 10 attaboys? Same thing.
Because a good reading will help that person make decisions and move forward positively, hopefully, in their life. And it'll make you look good in that you help them.
Mhm. Yes. I mean, you talked about you don't read comments. Unfortunately, that's part of what we do. And
Mm.
when I've had readings, there's all, especially if it's online, they found me here. There's always a little note to them 24 hours later. If you've had a good reading, please leave a review on Google because
Ah,
that's how people find me.
Right.
I read internationally. I've had clients in Berlin. I've had clients in Oslo. I've had clients in Bolivia. Um, they're not going to come to upstate New York with the sheep and the cows and meet me. So they may look on Google, and I've got something like 150 reviews on there, and all of, except for about four, are good because I do good work. That helps me. And no, I don't erase the ones that are not good. A, Google doesn't let you do that. And B, I kind of like them because it's obvious that my friends didn't just load this up. There are some
Mm.
people who think that I'm just the worst person in the world and, God should smite me dead. Well, live and be well, kids.
When you give somebody a reading, is it possible them to keep is it possible for the read readee to kind of close
Client,
themselves? The client, okay. Is it possible for the client to close themselves and make it difficult for you to do the reading?
yes. And that may be why, I mean, there are times I just don't connect with them. I'll throw cards, they'll make no sense. I'll try to reach their dead people and the phone rings and there's no answer.
Mm.
I'll try to get a past life for them, and I just see their Akashic records, the pages flipping and flipping, and they're all blank. And I explain, I cannot connect for you. I'm sorry. It is not that you're a bad person, but I simply am not your reader. It's okay. And I give them back the money. And if they're not nasty people like who's sleeping with my husband, I might say, you might try Stacey Wells, you might try Judy Abbott, you might try Catherine Knock, somebody that I know is good, just maybe on a different wavelength. It's not her problem, it's not my problem. It just is.
Is deja vu a real thing?
I'm sure it is. What it is, I'm not sure. I've heard some people say that we're getting feedback from our higher self watching things, or it's a past life, or whatever. I know
Mm.
that the World War I thing with me, you might think it's deja vu. Before I went to Rhinebeck in 1991, I knew nothing about World War I. Terrified of Germans because of everything we heard in World War II. Couldn't stand the language. When I was there, um, a lot of the planes meant nothing to me, but then I saw an Albatross D5 and a Fokker triplane. And it was like it woke up a tsunami in my head. And all of a sudden, within 24 hours, I needed to hear German spoken. I needed to look up the pilots. It was so important to me.
Wow.
And I didn't even tweak it was different, except that my boyfriend at the time said, have you noticed anything different? So that's a case of deja vu was a wake up call. Is it always like that? No.
I guess my definition is that it's only happened a few times in my life, but it's like I take a pause and I say, I've been here before, whether
Hmm.
it's my thought or I just feel something kind of, and then I kind of pass it away and I move on.
Hmm.
Is this insight to ability?
Maybe,
Hmm.
maybe. Um, but don't dismiss it. Make a note
Mm.
of it. I tell people, make notes, take out your phone and make a note of things, especially when you're first doing this work and you're trying to see what is my intuition real. Such and such happened. I chose to do this. You go back to it in a week, you'll see you were right, you were wrong. Because this is trial and error, kids. Nobody wakes up one day and says, I am now a perfect reader. I am a
Mm.
perfect medium. All of us, it's trial and error, just like anything else. My husband picked up his pilot's license after 40 years and he has his plane now. And he practices landings and takeoffs, touch and goes. Not all of them are gorgeous,
Mm.
but he keeps working it. Same thing with what we do.
You're also a reverend, Corbie. Is there any
Yep.
conflict there between that and your
No,
abilities?
no,
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 they're
no.
complementary.
For one thing, it's non-denominational,
Mm.
and I got it decades ago for two reasons. Number one, before it was the law of the land, if I had friends who bat for the same team and they wanted a sacred ceremony, by God, I was going to give it to them.
Good for you.
Secondly, it is very important, especially when I was doing shows south of the Mason Dixon line, because very often I would have people come up to me. you're a psychic, you're a tarot reader, you doing the devil's work. And I'd say, oh no, I'm a reverend. This is spiritual counseling. Oh, Reverend, we're so sorry. You go right ahead. So it was,
Ah.
frankly, a safety factor. That's a God's honest truth, no pun intended.
Hmm. How do you measure success, Corby?
Pay my bills. Seriously?
It's a quick answer.
Yeah, well, that's part of it. That is part of it. Um, a lot of people say you shouldn't be charging. That's not very spiritual. And I just say, look,
Ah.
back in the days when there were druids and seers, etc., no, they didn't ask for 40 shekels, but people would bring them a chicken or a cloak
Mm,
or some
mm.
firewood. I don't need a chicken, a cloak, or firewood, but I need to pay my bills. And it is an energy exchange. My years of experience and training and knowledge and insight. Um, so, what motivates me other than that, why I do what I do,
Success. Well, how do you measure success?
I can look at myself in the mirror every morning and every
Mm.
night and know I did a decent work. Um, could I use more business? Yeah, of course I could. Um, but success is not how many people you read. Success is not how many people think your aura don't stink. Success for me is that I've done honorable work. It has made a difference in the world. My husband is proud of me, which he
Mm.
is. Um, and I make a difference. That's really what it is. Nothing fancy.
That's wonderful. Corby, thank you so much. I was so excited when you accepted this. Well, I guess my last question is, does Bruce
Yeah.
love me? That's a joke, of course. But thank you so, thank you
I was
so
going to say, does
much.
your wife know about Bruce? But
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Now, if somebody wanted to give you a chicken, a cloak, or firewood, how can we get in touch with you?
oh God, Joy, they can't avoid me. The best place to find me is CorbieMitleid.com. That's my website. You can find me on YouTube,
Yeah.
Pinterest, Instagram, Medium. If you want to learn with me on a regular basis, you find me on Patreon.
Corbie. That's Corby and Mitleid,
Yes.
Mitleid.com. We'll make sure to put it in the show notes. I
Thank
thank you
you.
so much for your time today. I really, really enjoyed this. If I'm in your neck of the woods, perhaps you, your husband, and I can get a cup of tea.
As we say in this part of New York, we'll talk, we'll have coffee.
You be well. Thank you so much, Corby.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening and or viewing Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations. Please share this episode with one or two of your friends who you think may benefit from the episode. Our website, www.joeypins.com. There you'll find lots of resources and you could join our mailing list. Please follow us on all our social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Podcast information, the video version of our podcast is on YouTube. Please subscribe. Audio is on all major podcasting platforms. Please follow them. And if you like it, please consider giving 5-star rating. Would really appreciate that. Would you like to financially support the podcast? You can go to our Patreon site. Consider $5, $10, or $20 a month. There's all kind of plans that we have there. There's like a one-time payment. What is this podcast episode worth to you? $25, $50, $100, $500, $1,000, $5,000. You be the judge. You can go to our PayPal account to do that as well. Thank you again for listening or watching Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations.